For you all who have worked around death/burial, what's your best ghost story? Story 1. My grandfather was extremely sick in the days leading up to his death. He'd worked with asbestos for all his working life and had an extremely debilitating form as a result of it. He couldn't speak, and he hadn't spoken for a month leading up to his death. He couldn't even communicate. On the day of his death, he looked at my mother and said, "The angel is back." My mother was stunned. She asked what he meant, and he said, "The angel is back, and this time he wants me to come with him." My mother looked at the corner of the room where he was looking, turned back to him, and said, "Dad, there's nobody there." He didn't respond. He died that night. That was 20 years ago, and my mother never spoke of it again. She told me the story when I was old enough, just like she told my brothers, but my sister never got to the age where she was old enough. She succumbed to her disease when she was 7, after battling it her entire life. And on the days leading up to her death, she kept speaking about this butterfly who would visit her. My brothers and I would sit with her and nod along. We kind of just thought she developed this imaginary friend to help her through what she was struggling with. One day, she shot up and told us the butterfly is back, and he wants me to follow him. I saw my mother's face drop. She'd made the decision not to tell my sister she was dying, and my sister just believed she was going through a rough patch like she often did, not that the doctors had told my mother it was terminal. But my sister said, in the next second, "I'm going to die, aren't I?" That's what the butterfly said. He told me I'm going to die. My mother admitted to her that yes, she was going to die. She said, "Oh, okay." Then lay down and died with my brothers, my mum, and I cuddling her in bed. I don't know what I believe about the afterlife, but I have to think there must be one. That there's some truth behind the legend of the Grim Reaper, that at some point, something comes to lead all of us away from life. Because otherwise, I have no way of coming to terms with what I've experienced. Story 2. I have several stories from when I worked as a mortuary transport tech. The job was basically transporting the deceased from where they were to where they needed to go. Turns out dead people can have a lot of appointments. One time, though, I had an experience I've never forgotten. I was dropping someone off at the science donation place. This is when you donate your body to science and they take it from there. So I wheeled in the deceased, unlocked the freezer, and did all my stuff I had to do in there. I placed him on the board, got the lift out, and placed him on the shelf. The interesting thing about the freezer was that most everything, once it's processed, was wrapped in this blue tape type thing, and you could definitely tell what was inside. Legs, hands, feet, etc. kind of interesting to me at the time. Anyway, I shut the freezer and locked it back up and started wheeling the gurney back over to the garage door. The science drop-off and processing area was a big L shape, with the freezer off to the larger long portion, and then you turn the corner, and there's desks and filing cabinets and whatnot. I had a heart attack as I turned the corner, and there was just this guy standing there examining files in the file cabinet. Looked just like you or me. Dressed modernly, but out of place for what people normally wear back there. I stopped and said that he'd have to forgive me, but he almost gave me a heart attack. It didn't look like he heard me at all, or even knew I was there. I should mention this was also about 1 a.m., and I'd never seen anyone at the place this late. So I said, "Well, sorry if I startled you or anything," and went on about my finishing stuff. Got the gurney back in the van, closed and locked the large garage door from the inside. All the while this guy is just standing there, staring at an open file in front of him, not paying any attention to me. I had to use the bathroom, so I told him that's where I'd be going and I'd be right back. Again, no response. I thought maybe he's deaf and couldn't hear me. So I went to the bathroom and came back to the garage, and the guy is gone, but the file cabinet is still open. I didn't know where he went, and I hadn't heard anyone walk down the hallway past the bathroom. I checked and made sure everything I was responsible for was still locked, and it was. So I just announced that I was going to be leaving and locking up to set the alarm. No response. And that's what I did and left. I'm not sure who he was, or is, or what happened. But it was definitely an odd experience and one I still remember perfectly. I have a few other memories about my time at the job, if anyone else wants to hear. Nothing like what happened above, though. Story 3. I used to be a driver for a funeral home corporation, like drive the hearse and pick up the bodies. Never had anything creepy happen, a few funny things, a few traumatic things. In general, it was a chill job. However, I did get incredibly uncomfortable one night picking up a man who died at home. He still had the defibrillator leads on his chest and his eyes were closed, which is unusual because the eyes are always open. He just looked like he was asleep or unconscious, not rigid or pale or anything. I just had this sinking feeling for about half an hour in traffic that he was going to suddenly gasp and wake up in the body bag. Then it hit me. That would be the coolest thing ever. I'd take him home and he'd be back with his family. So I just kind of drove slowly and turned up some music and sang along and talked to him. When I got him to the funeral home, I left him out of the cooler for about an hour while I did paperwork and played on my phone. When I got another call, I checked on him and his limbs had started to stiffen. I was kind of bummed. I put him in the cooler and went on my next call. Story 4. I used to work on an oncology ward as a nurse. Our side rooms were kept for end-of-life patients on palliative care, and one patient that we had been nursing for a good few weeks died early one morning. Last offices had already been done by the night staff, and the patient moved to the hospital morgue, so all that remained was to clear the room of personal belongings and tidy up. I sent a student nurse that I was mentoring at the time to do this whilst I got on with the drug round. The student had known the patient fairly well and was comfortable with this job. About 10 minutes later, a colleague came to me and told me that my student had come flying out of the side room white as a sheet and was sopping in the staff room. I went to find out what the problem was, and the student told me she had been clearing out the sink area in the bathroom, had glanced up and seen the deceased patient reflected in the mirror looking at her over her shoulder. My student was a sensible girl, not given to hysterics, but for the remainder of her placement on that ward, she would not go near that side room. Story 5. I am an ICU RN. We had a septic patient in the unit. She was 29 weeks pregnant. She went into labor on my shift, and we delivered her baby stillborn. I did post-mortem care on the baby, retrieved the proper transport container, and walked the baby down to the morgue. It was the middle of the night. I'm in an elevator alone. I hear a baby start wailing. I absolutely lose my shit and rip open the cover, and just as I go to zip down the bag, I hear a calming male voice say, "Hush, little one, I've got you, no need to cry." The crying stopped immediately. Shaking, I opened the bag and saw exactly what I expected to see, a deceased 29-week-only baby. I am a big-bearded 40-year-old ICU nurse, and that was the scariest shit I've ever experienced. No one believes me to this day. I don't even want to speculate what the crying or the voice was. God, even typing that out, I felt my chest tightening. Story 6. I used to work as a nursing assistant in assisted living communities. Usually when a resident started to need hospice, they were transferred out to a higher level of care, so I didn't see death for a long time. When I first started, my favorite resident, let's call her Marilyn, would play Scrabble with me. She was completely alert and oriented. Sometimes she likes to sit quietly with an iPod shuffle clipped onto her vest and these huge headphones. She loved music. Slowly, she started to decline. I would help her get ready for bed, and she would get upset when she forgot how to do something. The only thing that calmed her down was playing music off my phone. She liked Frank Sinatra and the Beatles. Her independent ability declined rapidly, and soon she was bedridden. Still, I loved listening to music. This was during COVID, and her quality of life was diminishing so quickly that we didn't transfer her out. She had an apartment at the facility with all her belongings where she was comfortable. By the end, her dementia had progressed to the point that she couldn't remember how to swallow. Marilyn passed away with me, the head nurse and her family at her bedside in her apartment, Unit 202. I did her post-mortem care afterwards, styled her hair how she liked to wear it, even clipped her little iPod onto her shirt. A few days after she died, a woman in 203, her neighbor, kept wandering into the lobby during night shift, always at 3 a.m. She complained of loud music coming from Unit 202. That apartment was vacant, just full of Marilyn's belongings. She said the music was so loud it was deafening. Whenever the night shift worker went to check, he didn't hear anything. Not really creepy, more sad. I miss Marilyn. Story 7. I worked in ward nursing for 10 years. The spookiest thing that happened was a doctor hiding under the bed when I cleaned my first body and scaring the shit out of me. That definitely helped me get over the fear factor of working with the dead. Bodies groan and leak when you roll them to clean them, but that's normal. You just talk to them nicely as if they were alive. Egg, we're just going to put you in your nicest pajamas for your son to come and say goodbye. I'll clean yours. I'll paint your nails fresh as I know you like them this way. On most wards, there was a haunted room that staff members would avoid. They all said it was haunted because the buzzer would mysteriously go off by itself. Funnily enough, it would always stop buzzing randomly after maintenance came to fix it. Story 8. When I was a kid, I had a great uncle who was the caretaker for a local cemetery. Sometimes my dad would go work with him just to make some extra dough. One time, my pops was unavailable, so he gave the job to me. Had to bury a guy. Nothing ghostly happened. It is a strange dichotomy, though. On one hand, here's a family on one of the worst days of their lives, and on the other there's me and old Uncle Pete waiting to fill the grave. It had rained all that week. Graves fill up with a lot of water when that happens. As the lift was lowering the vault, in case peeps don't know, a burial requires the coffin to be sealed in a huge concrete vault into the grave. My uncle looked at me and said, "Shit, I hope he's got his swimming trunks on." And that was the day that I learned you can inject humor in a dark situation. For about a year, I delivered in-home medical equipment to hospice patients. Saw some people in really bad shape. The kind of shape where if it were me I'd be saying, "You'll need to end me, show me some goddamn mercy here." I also learned that cancer has a very distinct aroma. The stronger the aroma, the sooner that person would be passing on. I'd be in the middle of a hospital bed set up with an oxygen concentrator and everything else, and I'd be like, me or one of the other guys will be back here tomorrow or the day after. And usually that's what would happen. There was a time I pulled up to a residence just to deliver some backup oxygen tanks. A guy probably in his 40s meets me in the driveway and says he's not sure if they're gonna need it. Then he hears his name called from inside, followed by, "He's gone, he's gone." Jude went back inside, and I just said, "Call your nurse right away," and I got in my truck and left. The denial some people fall into is tough sometimes. We would have families that'd be like, "Can you park your truck really far away so nobody in the neighborhood knows we have hospice in here?" Sorry, it's a shitty time, but no, I sure can't do that. The worst were the children's cases. Herf. I remember one kid, he was maybe 11. His room was just plastered with photos of him with nearly every player on the local NFL team. He had been given so many things from that team his room looked like a storefront. I set up his equipment on a Tuesday and an aide was telling me, obviously they know it's terminal, but they're just looking forward to getting him out of the hospital so that he can at least be at home for his last few months. I was back by Friday clearing everything out because the little fella was home a grand total of like 36 hours before he left. Fucking dagger in the heart. His mother was a complete disaster, walking around the house clutching his framed school photo she had taken off the wall. No ghostly stuff though, no weird occurrences, no weird noises or anything. Also worked in a hospital when I was younger and would mop and buff the floors in the morgue. The orderlies told me they used to prank new guys by having one of them lay on the table and then jump up at them. Thankfully they never did that to me, haha. Wow, I just rambled way too long. Sorry everybody. Ain't nobody give a good goddamn about your stories, foo. And now you are talking to yourself, people gonna think you're nuts.